All right, so the test we chose was the minimal pairs test, and this is by Izzy, Jillian, Madeline, me, Heather, Mallory, and Ariel. So the test was created by a man named Kenneth Pike, and he was the main developer of the test. He was an American linguist and anthropologist who attended the University of Michigan and received his doctorate in linguistics. He spent 30 years at Michigan as the chairman of its linguistics department and as a professor of linguistics and director of its English Language Institute. So during his time at the University of Michigan, he invented the minimal pairs test. It was developed in the mid-20th century. Linguists and other professionals began using the test heavily in the 1940s and 1950s. The main concern was teaching students the differences in phonemes during that time. So on your left, you have an example of what one of the tests may look like, or a portion of it, I should say. The test is available to all who wish to have access. Although Pike and his colleagues coined it during his time at Michigan, it is free to be used by all and has been changed to better suit some patients' needs. It can be found on various websites such as the English Club, Espresso English, and if you simply Google minimal pairs test, many other examples come up as well. So minimal pairs are pairs of words or phrases in the same language that differ by one phonological element or a single sound and have distinct meanings. For example, fan and van. The only difference is the initial sound at the beginning of each word. Minimal pairs are used to help English learners distinguish between words that may sound the same. The purpose of the test would be to determine if the person is able to discriminate between sounds. This would determine if the person had trouble with perception or production of sounds. Clinicians use the minimal pairs test for a variety of reasons. The first step in ensuring that a child can produce a particular sound is to know if the child can perceive and differentiate that phoneme when it is presented to them. Oftentimes, in younger children, we see replacement or swapping of similar sounds. The question of this confusion comes to whether the issue lies in creation or in interpretation of the phonemes. In order to ensure that a child is able to not only produce but discern a sound, many trials may be needed over a period, as well as the integration of images and other aids. The minimal pairs test can be used throughout the ages of early education from the moment an issue with the phoneme production and reception is noticed, often around 3 or 4 years of age, until well into education, typically with children around 11 or 12 years old. The same discrimination task has been used to test the hearing of individuals who had pediatric cochlear implants to test their later hearing development. To determine if there is an issue with hearing versus speech production, a teacher administers the test by reading the minimal pair out loud. The child will then check or circle the correct word. If they are able to correctly identify the words, then it is not an audiological issue. So we have another example of what a test could possibly look like on the right. And so when administering the test, a clinician will go along this list of words on either side and pick one or the other and say that word loud. It is then the child's responsibility to circle which one they thought they said. So for example, a clinician may start with the first one and say lice. And so then a child has to determine whether they heard the sound or the sound. And then they will circle which one they thought they heard. The test is scored based on a percentage scale. As the student completes the test, the administrator of the assessment also keeps track of the pairs that the student correctly identifies. After completing the assessment, the administrator then calculates the number of correctly identified pairs versus the total number of pairs in the assessment. The percentage score for that student is then compared to a norm referenced scale. Researchers have used the minimal pairs test to make predictions of phoneme confusions. Their subjects were pediatric cochlear implant users, 1.5 to 2 years after they were fit with their implant, and selected from a population of children at Indiana University School of Medicine. Children in both groups had prelingual sensorineural hearing loss. So here is our video of Izzy administering the test to Jillian.